so coming up next, I'd like you guys to help me welcome to the stage. We have two presenters for our next session. And again, this session is Paving the Path to In-House Success. So looking at what's really worked at some successful in-house agencies. Please help me welcome to the stage Pete Kim, the CEO of MightyHive, and Josh Palau, Vice President with Bear.
Everybody hear me? Yes. Awesome. So my name is Pete Kim. I will be joined up on stage in a few moments by Josh Palau, who is at Bear and is one of our clients. And today we're going to be talking about paving the path to in-housing success. And so my firm, MightyHive, has over the last few years become one of the leaders in the general in-housing movement. And so that's really what we wanted to talk with you guys about today. At a conference whose title includes in-housing, that seemed like an appropriate thing to do. So with that, today, one of the things about us is that we're not worried about becoming obsolete if clients take programmatic or indeed media and creative in-house. In fact, we aim to enable this process. We work every single day with firms around the world who want to embrace this new way of doing things. A little bit of background on our company. We're about 7 years old. We've been growing very, very quickly. We have offices around the world, and in December of last year, we merged with S4 Capital, which is Sir Martin Sorrell's new venture post-WPP. So things are very, very exciting for us right now. We are growing at a tremendous clip, and some of the work that we are doing with in-housing is amongst the most exciting things that we really have going on. So we're proud to work with companies like these. Actually, this is a very incomplete list. These are the ones that we're allowed to talk about publicly. Right now, we are working with 7 separate in-housing efforts, all of which are going well. Though we're not allowed to talk about all of them, they are from every industry that you can imagine. And I just did a quick and dirty estimate. The total market cap of those 7 companies is close to $200 billion. And so these are, this is the type of work that we're doing all the time, and we're really kind of psyched to tell you guys about how we see this going today. So first, a poll for this room. How many people in this room have an in-house media team? Raise your hand if you do. Okay, excellent. How many people have an in-house creative team? Wow, okay. And how many people are thinking about taking either media or creative or something else in-house? I think that should probably be yes. Go ahead. Awesome. So today what we're going to be talking about is 3 things. I'm going to quickly lay out what is the big picture, the business case for why people are doing this in our opinion. Number 2, we'll move from there into how do you start to answer these types of questions. And what we like to talk about is the spectrum of control, which is the large number of options that are available to folks that are trying to solve this. And then we'll actually hear from Josh, who is leading the charge at Bear, one of our in-housing clients, to talk about how he, from the client side, has really thought about this and what has driven the success that they've had to date. So, the first thing that I think is really, really important is to understand why this is happening. And there has been story after story, event after event in the last few years that really tell you that something enormous is happening in the marketplace. Put it simply, there's chaos in the marketplace. Every single time that you turn around, it seems that there's another headline, another startling revelation, another story. It's bananas. But underlying all of it is the following. Today, there is a fundamental shift in media. Consumers, whom we advertise to every single day, have experienced something remarkable just in the last 10 years. For the first time in history, consumers can watch anything they want, read anything they want, listen to anything they want, perfectly synchronized at the touch of a button across every connected device that they own. In short, their media experience is perfect. And what's interesting is that that expectation for relevance, for personalization, for perfection applies not only to the media moments that come through those screens, but also to the ads, which come right next to them. And the problem for the advertisers is that, unlike the media streams, consumers won't pick and choose. They won't curate the ad streams, and yet the bar is still that high. Today, it is very clear to anybody who's paying attention to the consumer sentiment numbers around advertising that something's wrong. Consumers have never had a more negative view on ads, which is why they're blocking them, which is why they're becoming blind to the banners or blind to the things that, really kind of pay for the media. Now, beyond just the fact that that's concerning, if you take a step back and think about it, something must have changed. And what is that? Did we get worse at it? Did we get worse at advertising? Or did the bar go up? And I claim it's the second one. That bar went up because of this fundamental shift in media. And so that is what's happening. And yes, there are some other things that are happening, like the transparency scandals that have happened, but in my opinion, those types of things only accelerated something that was going to happen anyway. The fundamental shift that's happening right now is that we're moving to meet the expectations of consumers who expect your ads not to say something generic to them, but to say something perfect. That takes into account everything that you know about them and moves the conversation, because that's what these are. 100 million conversations, 100 billion conversations in real time, to move those conversations forward. Against that backdrop, we have senior leadership in the marketing world talking about the need to take back control. If you are going to have these conversations with folks, you need to have control over it. You need to have the speed, the agility, the unfettered access to the data, all of those things that are necessary in order to make this happen. And what we at MightyHive believe is that control is about who is doing the work, not what type of work is being done. And I can talk to you guys all day long about the different types of technologies and the different types of tactics and the whiz-bang things that are out there, because we do that every day. But when we're talking about in-housing and we're talking about control, it's not about those things. It's about who's doing the work and where they're doing it. Why take control? Access and ownership. In today's world, everybody is talking about first-party data. And the honest truth around first-party data is that it is critical to your future success. First-party data is the only data that you will have that your competitors will not. Full stop. If you're not using it, then you literally are using you're literally only using data that your competitors have as well. You must use your first-party data, but the twin mandates around first-party data is use and protection. And see how far you get when you go to your chief security officer or even your chief executive officer and ask, hey, can I send an outsourced team the name of every single customer we've ever done business with, what they bought, how much they bought it for, and when they bought it? And the answer is going to be no. The data must be used, and if it cannot move, then I think it's pretty clear what has to happen to the folks that have access to it. They need to be in-house. Transparency and cost savings, I'm not going to belabor this one. I think everybody in this room has heard over and over and over again about the big things that are happening, the FBI investigating agencies and things like that. Instead, I'm going to talk about improved performance. In a digital-first world, advertisers need to be nimble, they need to be fast, and they need to conduct experiments in order to find those pockets of ROI. And we think that when we go and see clients today, oftentimes we are impressed, or they're lucky if they're doing 10 experiments a year. Way too slow. We want our clients to do 10 experiments a week better, 10 experiments a day. How about 10 experiments an hour? The faster you learn, the more improved performance you're going to have, and this also is a reason for taking control. There's a lot of barriers to control that are out there. The technology is complex, it's hard to know what the right solution is. All this leads to massive confusion. There's a lack of ability to execute. Oftentimes, the folks that are your consultants or the folks that are your agencies are just as lost as you are, although they won't admit it. And then there's always resistance to change. If you're trying to bring something in-house, even if you know you're right, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are saying, you know what? I don't want to change, and I want this to just stay the way it was. All of those things are real. But I believe this. The organizations that do take control will be the winners of tomorrow. If you study business history, every single time a major media shift has occurred, the people who master that new medium, the people who master the ways to attract and interact with their most important constituency, their customers, are the ones that win, and I think we're right in the middle of that right now. Taking control is not a binary decision. I think this is fairly obvious, but let's just be clear. If you want to take control, it's not about I'm in control or I'm not in control. There is a huge number of options that are in between those two states. We call that the spectrum of control. And that is really to kind of emphasize the fact that there's a number of options here, and that one of them is right for you. So, when we're talking about this in a very simplistic format, which is all we have time for in the sort of 10 minutes that I have on stage today, here's just 4 variations on it. Again, there are tons of these, but you can have outsourced and non-transparent, outsourced and transparent, embedded, which is partners and consultants who are actually in your office working next side by side with you, and then total in-housing, employees who actually work in-house. All of these are just, and by the way, I think that all of these are 4 reasonable options. I'm not saying that everybody in the world should go to number 4, full stop. There are a number of things that you need to study and a number of things that you need to understand what the options are, and then pick the one that's right for you and then get there. By the way, that's what my firm does. We are the folks who help you understand what the options are, to analyze with you your business and your business realities and the tempo, and then help you figure out where the journey should go, and then we actually accompany you on that journey rather than leaving you with just a deck. There are lots of execution areas. People talk about in-housing, again, as just this blanket word, but what have you in-housed? Is it creative? Is it media? Is it measurement? Is it tech contracts? Is it audience segmentation? All of these things are there, and all of these things can move independently of one another. For example, if you go maximum control, fully in-house, everything in that sort of right-hand column, that's the hardest to execute, but there's the greatest potential performance there. On the other hand, if you are a different type of firm, then maybe marketing isn't as important, and that's possible. Then maybe you've just outsourced everything. That's the easiest to execute, but the performance will be limited because your profit always comes second. Hybrids are common. I'm going to do this in-house, I'm going to have this outsourced, I'm going to have these things, and you can kind of go through it, and that is, too, a legitimate option. The factors that you should take into account when you're thinking about this are the following. How big is your media budget? Just do some math. If you're spending $100 million in media, and then figure out how much you're spending on fees, and then think about how many people you could hire with that. The sensitivity of the data. We talked about earlier the critical nature of first-party data and why you have to use it. That being said, all data is sensitive, but some data is more sensitive than others. If you work in an industry where laws have been written specifically about your data, then that's a good indication that this stuff might be interesting. The types of things that we're talking about today might be interesting to you. Pharma, financial services, Europe. It's kind of crazy. It's California, which is where I'm from. So, diversity of target audience, diversity of product portfolio, these are all very important. That's just about complexity. If you've got one message to give to one audience, then that's fine. However, very few of us work in that sort of simplistic world anymore. The more complicated it gets, the more experiments that you need, the quicker that you need to have this research occur, and then the need for agility, the need for speed. There are some industries that are rather sleepy. There are other industries that wage war with each other each day via media and press and all those types of things. And I will say that the more competition you have, the more that you need to be fast and nimble. And what's interesting is that, in my opinion, every industry is accelerating. So, here are some big decisions for you before I turn it over to Josh. The spectrum of control. Where on this spectrum do you need to land? Review your ability and appetite to transform, etc., etc. Then you're also going to need to make some decisions around technology stacks. Figure out which technology you want to use, which technologies you want to use, and then finally choose a partner to help you. I promise you that this is a worthwhile thing to do, and it's also, I promise you, very helpful to have a knowledgeable partner to help you on that journey. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Palau.
Hello, I'm Josh Palau. So by the way, so Pete went long. I didn't want to tell him that I was up there. I'll be here till Friday. I'll answer any questions that we don't get to today if we go through some of the Q&A. So I think I have an interesting story to tell, at least that's what I believe. But I want to go through some of the journey that happened with Bayer, because in the last several years, I've worked for Comcast, J&J, and Bayer. So very small, nimble, non-political companies. And if I had to go back in time and figure out which one of those companies would let me insource, it would never have been Bayer. And so just to kind of go through what we're doing, as well as our partnership with MightyHive. Some of this now, by the way, just for some background, I joined Bayer September of 2017. My full team has probably been in place since I'd say late 2017, very early 2018. So we have done a lot in a really short period of time. And it's predicated on this journey that we started that predates me, where basically Bayer took a good look at what we were doing from a digital standpoint and realized we weren't as good as we should be. And so there was a really intense evaluation and a roadmap created just around everything we were doing, from programmatic, technology stacks, what do we own, what type of people do we have in the building, and what it led to was this roadmap where we basically, it's right now, it's a ginormous sheet of paper that has all these different projects and processes and things that we need to put in place and milestones and dates, and they were basically something that we could map towards. And with part of that became our quest for technology ownership. And so what we realized is there's technology that we absolutely need to own, things like our integrated marketing dashboards or just our Google Analytics ownership. And then there were things our agency had to own. But anything our agency owned, we had direct access to. And so we put those two things together, and then Bayer made a conscious decision to open up headcount around a different type of employee. I was one of those employees, as well as the fact that we brought in subject matter experts in search, programmatic, and analytics. And when I say subject matter experts, I don't mean someone who understands search and who can direct your agency. I mean ex-hands-on keyboards, ex-people who have built and actually created data structures and understand how auction models work. And in doing this thing, between the evaluation all the way through the talent model that we had, we all of a sudden created this enormous pressure in the organization of things that we just found were breaking. And so what that really led to for us was this idea of how do we fix what's going on. So in a perfect storm of circumstances, in parallel to this, we were headed down, like most corporations, a big reorg. And so probably summer of 2018, I had a few people, senior people, pull me into the room. One of them was an HR lead, and that scared me at first. But I got in there and they said, okay, so here's what we're trying to figure out. We have this reorg, we have a chance to reset things that are happening in the organization. How do we get the organization to be better digitally? Like, we have good marketers, their skill set, they weren't born and raised in digital, but how do we get world-class marketers who understand digital? Your team seems really good. We're looking at numbers, we're looking at data, we're hearing good reviews, but you can't seem to do enough and you can't seem to do it fast enough. So help us figure out how you can do more and how you can do it faster. And by the way, if there's any savings you can find, let us know. I have to stress this last part. And by the way, I love the fact that so many people raise their hands that they are headed down these models or you already have these models. If your goal with insourcing is to save money, I would argue it's probably not the right foundation to build on. And the reason I say that is because I think you end up making the wrong decisions based on different motivations. So at some points you'll make sort of, I think, concessions that you wouldn't normally make because you're focusing on bottom line impact. So I remember very distinctly a GM saying to me as we were going through this plan of, look, you just can't lose money. But if you come out cost neutral and you can solve those first two problems, that's exactly what we need. And so it started with this vision of, okay, well, from my perspective, was we need more people in the building who do the things that digital people do, right? So many organizations hire people with marketing backgrounds, hire MBAs, and then they bring them in and try to teach them digital. And I've always believed that I have a 20, I know I look really young, but I have a 20-year career in digital, and I can't teach it to you in a lunch and learn. So I have to figure out some way to actually partner great marketers with great digital people, because it is much easier for me to take a digital person and teach them Bear than it is to take a Bear person and teach them digital. And so we created this model where basically we have these media strategists that work with our brands, and they basically run the end-to-end media strategy for them. And what they do there is basically work with our subject matter experts to figure out what's our bidding strategy, what's our audience strategy, what are we doing from a search standpoint, what's our test and learn, or not our test and learn, sorry, what's our learning agenda for the year, what's our creative evaluations that we're doing in terms of testing against those learning plans. But it created this model that basically we put forward and said, look, over the next 2 years, here's what we want to do. Year one, and I'll talk about how MightyHive fits into this because they're a big partner in this, but year one is having those strategists as well as an in-house group of experts that can actually work with the brands in the manner which I've just described. For year one, though, I do need to bring in some more people because, again, I need more people to spread throughout the organization. So we have open heads for analytics, programmatic, and search. And so we've already hired 2 of those positions. If you know anybody who's great in those positions, or if you're looking, just let me know. I won't tell anybody if your boss is here. But there was a commitment in the organization to say, okay, we can start to bring in that sort of talent. But what we all knew going into this was we couldn't do it on our own. Like, we needed a partner to help us get to this end vision. And so therein lies MightyHive. And so what we found that we were looking for, and I'm going to take these a little out of order. First and foremost, we needed a partner with technical expertise. So we're a full-on Google shop. We're not changing that. We own our stack, we own our technologies, and we needed a partner that could come in and not only understand the platforms that we were working with, but who could actually do all the crazy, dirty taxonomy, annoying work that you can't pay anybody else to do. You can pay them to do it, by the way. But you can't pay anybody to do it or really staff against it, but you need to get to an end state that you're trying to get to, and you can't do it unless you have the right partner. The other part, and I think this is really critical, is a shared vision of where you want to go. So Pete is well aware that I do not expect to be working with him after 2020. I think it's, just to give you a little wiggle room, I think I might still be working with him a little bit, but we walked into this partnership knowing, look, year one, I need your help with executional, I need your help with setup. Year two, we already pulled together an attrition model that says basically as I add people, you pull people back, and at some point we shake hands and walk away with some great work that we've done. And I think if you don't have that shared vision, if I had pitched that to an agency, I think I'd still be working with an agency years from now. The last piece, and I wrote something about this the other day, and I can't also stress this enough. First of all, MightyHive isn't an agency for us. They're media consulting, technology consulting. They are certainly not an agency in the traditional way that I have worked with agencies in the past. But I had a few people who said to me, we're just switching agencies, right? We're just moving from one to the other. No, that's not what we're doing. Because if I was doing that, I will somehow get trapped in that middle ground where management will say, it seems like it's going well. Why don't you just stay the course and let's not add all these people and make more change within the organization? And so the point is we've picked a partner that shares a vision and whose business model is to help you get to self-sufficiency. If I pick another partner, I'm going to get sold something else that's going to keep me on there, and it's going to keep me away from my end state vision. So sort of like where we are now, because it's not all rainbows and cats, but it's going. But I have to say, I am very, very pleased with where we are. I'm very excited when I go to work every day. Again, I did not think I would say that going to work for a 154-year-old German company, but I totally believe that right now, and I think we're in a great spot. And just overall, just mass wins in terms of what we put together. My media strategists at the basically Q3 and Q4 worked across all of our brands, pulled together our entire digital media plans, working with our platform partners, working with MightyHive, and basically created media plans that we implemented on January 2nd, and we started working with MightyHive on November 4th, I believe. There was some pre-work done before that, but that's how quickly we turn things around. We have direct contracts with data providers like Oracle and Nielsen. We work with LiveRamp. We have ownership now of our Google stack, and I'm sorry, not just our stack, but our instance. We have all social control of all of our platforms. So we did a tremendous amount of work to get all this stuff in. We took all these disparate data sources that we had that were all over the place and stuck them in one dashboard. It's a company called Datarama. I think they're here. If you haven't talked to them, you should talk to them. But we now have all structured data in one place that we can actually check and measure and look with and look and see how performance is going. So that's been great. And we've seen everything launch, and we've had some bumps along the way, but it's a significant amount of wins. I think the win that I most love telling people about was from October 20-something to December 30th. we got 36 contracts through our system. That's MSAs, that's SOWs, that's NDAs. We got them all through the system. And I say that because, as Pete sort of alluded to, there's this idea of change, and we can't change, and we can't do things differently. And I can tell you that that's not true. If you keep asking, if you keep pushing, and if you keep having a business plan that aligns to what your leadership wants, you will get people to mobilize behind you like you do not believe. So 36 contracts, I'm super proud of that because I also had to deal with a group of folks who literally are like, what's library? What does that do? Wait, we're gonna own our data? I don't understand. Like, Nielsen knows where I shop, and we had to go through that whole education process with a whole group of people that then totally got on board. In terms of unforeseen hurdles, there's probably a couple. Some of them are just the way my team is wired. I have an analytics person that doesn't just want data and media costs in our platform. He wants them broken down by partner. He wants to see how much each channel is charging so that we can have full transparency, so that we can understand which one is doing better than others. It's creating some backup in the work that he has to deliver against, but he's got the sort of right mindset to do it. But it's just one of those things that we're like, we kind of thought we'd get some of this data in quicker, and we're realizing it's a little bit messier than we thought. It's not stopping us from what we're doing, but it's definitely a hurdle. I think another one is probably, and for those of you who've gone through this, you'd probably say this is probably true of your organizations as well, is sort of back office administration. So I have a director who's super smart, and being completely honest, if anybody here has ever seen The Shawshank Redemption, not like Andy Duchesne falls through like 4 miles of sewage to get to the end, like that was Jeff. Like Jeff, before I got here, crawled through 2.5 miles of sewage, and then I stood out there and watched him crawl the rest of the way, and I cheered him on, and he got there. But he's right now back in the office paying bills for us, because we've never paid bills before. So he's working with finance, opening up POs and paying bills, and that's probably not the best use of his time, but it's the job that needs to be done. And I think the biggest thing that I talk about when I interview people to join our team, I don't talk to them about their technical expertise or what they know about our Google stack, because I don't know enough to really have that conversation. I talk to them about culture, I talk about fit, I talk about how much you want to roll up your sleeves and change the way an organization works. And that's what we've done, and that's, I think, when I think of those unforeseen hurdles, it's getting some of that back-end system in place that I think we have to figure out over the next couple of months. So, and look, I'm going to be right on time for these questions. So just a couple of takeaways. First is I think for some people we split hairs on like, what do you mean you're in-house? You're still using an agency, you're still using a consultancy. It's find your version of in-house. I could live very comfortably with my little group of subject matter experts and my media strategist and a partner. Like that could work in our model right now. It's not what I want, it's not what my management team wants, but we could survive that way. And if I did that, I would not say that I didn't bring things in-house. I would absolutely say that. It's just what you bring in-house. Sort of what Pete was saying with the spectrum of control. The other part is what is your end game? I talked to, by the way, ever since this happened, I've talked to so many people about some of the great work that's happening, and it's amazing to hear different experiences. And if you have experiences, I'd love to hear what you all are dealing with. But the one I come across the most common is, so we started bringing some things in-house, and now we're at this point, midway through the year, towards the end of the year, and we're thinking, should we add more or not? And maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. And so if I went down our path of not saying to our leadership team that, look, in 2 years, by 2020, we need to be fully self-sufficient, I feel like we would struggle with how do you add more headcount, how do you add more technology, how do you change the way you're doing, because you haven't really defined that end game. So our end game was very emphatic from the very beginning. In 2 years, we will have it in-house. And so in doing that, it allowed me to go to our president sometime in February and say, hey, by the way, you know all those headcounts you approved in 2020? I need you to open those requisitions at the end of June. And I know we haven't reported numbers yet for Q1, but they need to be open because it's going to take them about 6 months to hire. And he said, yes. Why? Because he understood the end state. The whole part that I talked about, even though we're struggling with some back office pieces, the whole relationship that we have with those groups, with IT, they're all aligned because they understand the end state. Right? They're not going to push back on how we integrate Datorama into our platforms or into our tech stack because they know that's our end state. So lay out that end state and make sure you know what you're working towards. And then I have probably the most cliche thing ever, which is like, don't let people tell you can't do things or this is how we've done it. But it's true, right? Like, I mean, I remember prior to all this craziness, I tried to bring in a partner to do some work for me in early January, and I think I talked to him in September, and I was told, you're never going to get a contract signed, and this is pre-insourcing, so this is the old model. You're never going to get a contract signed in 4 months. Seriously? at one point when we hit upon, hey, maybe we should bring the search in-house, like that seems like a pretty easy slam dunk. You're never going to hire people like that, or you're never going to be able to pay a bill. We can't do that. That's not what we do. If you lay out the business model, if you show people the benefits at the end, if you work towards something like we said, how do we make our organization better digitally? How do we scale the great work that we're doing for the channel? You will absolutely get what you need. It's just laying out those first pieces. There's some, I don't read poetry, just to be clear, in case anybody's wondering, but there's always this one line that always stuck with me from this one poem about, like, what will you do with this, like, crazy one precious life you have? I have a lot of my focus on spending time doing more things of service and things of charity, but sort of related to that is how we change our industry. And I had somebody say something to me the other day about, what's this blip that's going on? What's this trend of in-housing? And I said, it's not a trend, it's not a blip. When Bayer and Mondelez and BlackRock and all these other companies that you're hearing about are doing what we're doing, it is a fundamental shift of how our business changes. And so part of my sort of soapbox about service is how can I help other people? How can other people help me? How can we all work together to sort of make our organizations better and to make our industry better? Because I think we're right at the cusp of another big change, and we could all be a big part of it. So once again, I'm Joshua Palau. Thanks for the time.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you both for that. That was fantastic. So, however we want to spread out. We've got some time for questions, but I got a couple to kind of kick us off here first. So actually for you, Josh, just I guess kind of clarification from my side. You're only doing media buying in-house, or you're doing creative as well?
So there's somebody here from our organization. I don't know where Jen is, but we're doing some work with creative. Oh, there she goes. Hey, Jen. So right now it is media planning, buying. It'll eventually become activation once MightyHive goes away. Sorry. Activation and analytics. But right now we are in the process of looking at how we can do some more creative in-house. But we still work very closely with our agencies, and it's more around production more so than anything else.
Okay. Great, interesting things about the purchase of MightyHive and the merger of MightyHive with S4 Capital was that we also have now joined forces with MediaMonks, which is one of the most awarded creative firms.
Great. So actually, Pete, for you, I'm kind of curious, when a potential client comes to you and says, hey, look, I'm interested in bringing work in-house or transitioning, where do they start? What do you tell them to kind of look at first or think about in this process?
Well, as I noted, the first thing that we all have to do is to, and as Josh noted too, is to establish a firm vision for what this is all going to come to. And that's not a matter of guesswork, that is a matter of analysis. And so the first thing that we typically do is to really just do an audit of what's happening right now, what are the business challenges, what's working, what's not, where do you have, and that's not just sort of strategy, that gets all the way down into the technology platforms. We're cracking open the ad servers, we're cracking open the DSPs, and we're cracking open everything else. And then we're looking at attribution, and then we're looking at analytics. The long and the short of it is that this is an important decision, and so it should be backed up by firm analysis as opposed to guesswork.
So let's go ahead and take some audience questions now. And I'll bring those up on the screen. So looks like the first one here, Pete, is for you. Talk about increased performance. What are some hard business performance metrics that you can share around in-house?
One of the unfortunate truths of having only a few minutes up on stage means that you have to drop a couple of slides here and there. We didn't have the specific case studies that we had, but here's one just right off the top of my head. Our first in-housing client was Sprint, and we took them over in 2017, and it was a little bit of a hair-raising experience for us. It was our first one, and I remember we cut over on August 1st, and I got a call from the Chief Digital Officer, and they said, listen, how's performance going? And I said, you know what, let's go look. And we were very pleased to find that on the first day, actually within the first week, we'd improved performance 30 to 40% on a CPA basis. And after a full year, it has been, we've doubled the performance. And that is absolutely spectacular. And it is not just that's not our numbers, that's Sprint in earnings calls and to Wall Street trumpeting the, sort of savings and performance improvements around these types of things.
If I could add to that, just from a client standpoint, I mean, it's similar. I mean, it's in the vein of what Pete said, but yeah, I mean, we're looking at everything from how do we increase effective reach, where's our cost, what's our video completion rates, but all under the guise, and I guess the completion rate might be a little bit off topic on that one, but all under the mode of now that we move this in-house. So there is flat out, I think we all know this, there is flat out a, hey, we said we'd spend X, we spent X last year, we're gonna spend X less Y, and that's one thing to measure, but the other KPIs are those things that, look, we promise to be able to deliver better performance and better performance in the channel. And so here's the 5 or 6 metrics we're actually managing against. We also have put in one, though, I have to figure out how exactly we're going to execute it, but we're going to treat ourselves to a standard of asking our brand marketers how do they feel they're being served, right? Are they missing things that they had before? So far, the feedback has been great, but we just want to kind of see where that lands.
There's some great questions here, by the way.
There are.
I was soft.
That's all right. We really like the second one here is how do you get legal to move as fast as you? I think everybody wants to know that.
Beer. Yeah, I mean it's legal, right? Like there's no secret formula. Like here's what I would say, and I'd say that when I'm going to say this, and you may be amazed, or you may be completely underwhelmed. I think there was definitely a lot of the homework done ahead of time of these are what these platforms do. And I think that really level set, like, okay, I'm getting educated because this isn't my world, and I understand why we need these things. We did also spend a lot of time explaining that every single platform we are partnering with, we currently use with our agency. There is just a contract written to somebody else. Now, there's different indemnifications and risks and all that stuff that legal people know. But that, I think, also gained comfort that, like, okay, so literally it's the same platforms you were comfortable with us using through this agency. Now we're the owners of that. And I think that helped us on a little bit. I also think, frankly, look, it was not, I can also tell you one other thing. This was not some, like, wave of the magic wand president, like, so-and-so said to go do this. But everybody understood that there was a big change in the organization happening, and this was a part of it. So they really just sort of wanted to get behind it.
To riff on that a little bit, it's not just legal that has to work faster, it's all the departments that marketing interacts with. Marketing does not, operate in a vacuum. So, I mean, actually, we even heard some of it in Josh's stories today, right? Finance has to change, and data science has to change, and manufacturing, and e-com, and analytics, and all those things, right? The tempo has to go up. And so across the board, all these things. And frankly, like, I would say that half of the benefits that we see just come from that additional speed coming not just from marketing, but from the combined marketing effort for the whole company.
So, Josh, I really like that you talked about some of the unforeseen hurdles.
Thanks.
I think one of the things we often don't get to hear about are the struggles. We always hear about the great things that happen, but what about those hurdles?
That's why I'm going to be on the main stage next year, right?
Yeah. We'll talk. But let's, looking at this first question up here at the top, kind of on that same note of was this a hurdle or not, but how do you handle that creative asset workflow?
Yeah, so again, it's a little off of, it's not part of the insourcing plan, at least the one that I'm managing. I will say this, as you go down this path, you all of a sudden realize how important creative is to everything you do. Again, statement of the obvious, but when you're in charge of the performance of the channel, you get really focused on how that is. Bear, like most other companies, takes a lot of their TV and puts it online, and this is what we did in the past. We've done a lot of work in changing that. I think we've right-sided our agency rosters to sort of marry against fit for platform creative. We partnered also with companies that we hadn't partnered with before. So we work a ton with BidMob, and they basically take some of our creative and they make it a lot better. And so they make it fit for platform, and they've got great analytics behind us, and that sort of helps us manage through this. But I think that's where you have to get a little bit more nimble, because I think that the creative agencies are still struggling with how do they handle this insourcing thing? Because the insourcing thing is a bigger impact because there's less technology, though it's growing, that impacts their world. Where again, like I use the same tools that my agency uses. There's not a cost savings there, but if I can do more creative through automation and with people in house, I think that's a significant savings.
Great. Awesome. Well, Pete, Josh, we are out of time, but thank you both so very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Those other 2 questions were awesome, so whoever asked them, come ask them later, and we'll talk about it.